welcome to Beyond Profit. I'm so glad you've joined us since we started this being our second episode. Last week we spoke at length about climate smart agriculture and how you and any other farmer out there can plug in to ensure we are farming in ways that really protect our climate. Now today we delve deeper and look into the SDGs, but with a specific angle on SDG 13, speaking about climate action. And guess what? Our guests today are, oh my goodness, the work they're doing, you'll be surprised at this conversation. In the house, I have Mr. Eric Naivasha. I like the name, Naivasha. I always told him that it's a unique name, and he's the Associate Director at Equity Group Foundation. And he'll be speaking to us about what are they doing down there. But first, let's take a quick look at his profile. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
It's good to have you here. I remember you in the previous session when we had our conference, and when you spoke at length, it was amazing to see that corporates, especially the direction in which we're pushing corporates to start thinking about climate, have embraced this agenda. But you started way long ago. But first, before we get into what you were doing, it would be nice for our guests to get to understand who you are and your role at the foundation and what they do.
Thanks very much, Maina, and thanks for having us. My name is Eric Naivasha. I head the a pillar called Energy, Environment and Climate Change within the foundation and also within Equity Group and supporting all the 6 countries that Equity has presence.
Yeah, wow, that's great. But now let's talk about your foundation and what exactly you are working in.
Yeah, the Equity Group Foundation is a social engine of the group. Equity Group operates with 2 engines. There is the economic engine,
definitely,
and there is the social engine. And we also believe that we have 2 licenses. There is a license that we are given by the Central Bank of Kenya and other central banks in other countries to open doors every day to our customers to serve them.
Absolutely.
But we have an equally important license that is given by the communities that we serve. And that's why our social engine it's our biggest tool within the group in terms of looking at what are the social ills, what are our clients looking for, what are their pain points, and then we are able to craft programs and projects that are aimed at reducing the pains and the burdens of the customers as we serve. And as you are aware, we have 6 pillars within the foundation. We have the education pillar. That is one that is well known with the brand Wings to Fly.
Absolutely.
Where we provide scholarships to needy kids for transition to high school. And that pillar has really done very well in the last 10, 12 years.
Absolutely.
We have the health pillar, and you've seen Equity Afya clinics coming all over the place. Because we believe that we also need to democratize health access in this country.
Absolutely.
The way Equity democratized financial access 20 years ago, over that years ago, it's how we want to democratize health access to make it quality and affordable.
Absolutely.
And that's why we are participating in the health pillar, so that the ordinary person out there is able to access health affordably and quality. Then we have agriculture.
Absolutely.
And I know we are going to talk a little bit more about agriculture. With a pillar within the foundation that looks at agriculture. How do we commercialize agriculture? When you go to the rural areas in Kenya, the resource that we have there is land. You find a family has some a piece of land, but all they are doing is peasant farming.
Yeah.
How can we make that small piece of land,
Yeah.
or that big piece of land, become the breadwinner of that family?
Yeah.
How can we commercialize agriculture?
Yeah.
Through training, through best practices in agriculture and all that. So
Sure.
we have a pillar that looks at that. Then we have a pillar on social protection, because we don't want to leave anybody behind.
Yeah.
This is a pillar that works with the elderly, with the refugees, the vulnerable within the society,
Yeah.
on things like cash transfer programming, on capacity building. That's why we have branches in Dadaab, in Kakuma,
Yeah.
that works, agencies in
Yeah.
those areas. We have a big network in marginalized areas that looks at the vulnerable within society.
Sure.
And then we have the pillar of entrepreneurship, development, financial inclusion.
Very true.
And it's all about the youth, women, job creation, funding small businesses so that they can grow and also can create employment.
Yeah.
Employment in Africa is created by SMEs, not governments and corporates.
Yeah.
It's created by SMEs. So
They
we have a
control
pillar
the
that
highest
supports that.
percentage. Yeah.
And then you also have a pillar on the one that I'm privileged to lead on environment
Yeah.
and climate change.
Which is what we're going to dwell on. And the first question for me is thinking, okay, this is an institution that really focuses on ensuring they have access to capital for the majority, and we appreciate the fact that you're among the leaders in this, not only just in Kenya, but in the region. But you also have a concern on climate change, which you are spearheading. So the quick question will be, why that concern? It'll be nice for you to tell us.
Climate change is caused by human activity, is caused by economic activity. How we generate and consume power,
Yeah.
how we transport ourselves, how we produce goods in industries, how we manage our waste. It's caused by a lot of human activity, including deforestation and all that.
Very true.
And land use.
Yeah.
And the question then is, who is funding those economic activities? It's banks.
It's banks.
So can banks play a role in reducing the aggregate levels of greenhouse gases?
Absolutely, they can.
The correct answer is yes.
Yeah.
So that's why equity, we said, will be very deliberate
Yeah.
and very intentional, that we'll monitor our own emissions and aim to reduce our own emissions. We'll monitor the emissions of our clients and ecosystems and work with them to transition to technologies, to fuels,
Yeah.
to practices
Yeah.
that do not cause more harm to the environment.
You're right. You're
So we think that the way banks deploy their balance sheets to fund economic activity can be done in a way that is more sustainable
Okay.
and that does not fuel the increase in greenhouse gases that we are seeing.
Absolutely, and that's commendable, because honestly speaking, as on the side chat we were talking about how the dry lands we have always thought are in Kenya are still encroaching more towards our fertile lands. The Meru region is now part and parcel of some of the areas we're starting to talk about as affected. So we really need to rethink and ask ourselves very hard questions, and we appreciate what you're doing. Let's now dive deeper into what I spoke about, climate action SDG 13, which is we need to have an in-depth approach to its actualization. And my question to you would be this: how crucial are the interactions and interdependence of these pillars you've just spoken about in your foundation to achieve climate action?
Yeah, SDG number 13 talks about climate action. Is about creating resilience.
Yeah.
Is about transitioning people into practices and technologies that do not harm the environment. And when you look at how we operate within the pillars,
Yeah.
they support each other. For instance, if you look at the pillars of agriculture, for example, and the pillar on environment, we work together.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we need to be very intentional about is how can farmers continue producing
Yeah.
even when there is no rain? What practices do we need to bring on board in technologies? Because they are there. If you go to Australia, it's one of the largest deserts, and they produce
And they're
food.
producing enough for themselves.
And they are producing food.
Yeah.
Even some other countries in Africa, we were discussing some of the countries in Africa that have really embraced other crops that are not rain dependent, and they are producing and feeding their people.
Wow.
So how then do we work with the agriculture pillar to start training people about these methods and practices of climate smart agriculture, call it climate smart agriculture. And those taxonomies are many. There are many.
You're right.
When you look at the pillar on entrepreneurship, they work very closely with the pillar of agriculture because training is required. So our training pillar works with the farmers, work with the pillar of agriculture to train farmers on these practices. If you look at the pillar of health, works very closely with the pillar of education. The clinics I was talking about are actually manned by doctors who have come from the education pillar with the wings to fly.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you look at social protection, we are working with the vulnerable communities, as I told you earlier during our side conversation, working with almost now 4 million households in these regions to create resilience. So you can see there's a lot of interdependence. The pillar on environment works very closely with the education pillar because when we plant trees, for example, and you know we have a big target of that 5 million trees.
Wow, that's a good one.
That we plant. Currently, we've already planted that 19 million.
Wow.
These trees have been planted with schools, with the education pillar in schools, because we want to capture the minds of young people. When they are young, start thinking about environmental conservation. So you can see a lot of interdependence between these pillars in trying to address many issues in society, not just climate change, but you can see the interconnection between the pillars.
I love that, and you know, it's an integrated approach to really systematically think through adaptation measures to ensure climate change is not going to continue on ravaging on us. One of the quick questions that just ticks into my mind is looking at, you know, our new government. We have seen the president really come out strong, saying, even when he was at the global stage speaking about climate change, mentioning a lot about the COP27 that is coming on, and really it's quite promising to see that this is an agenda within their system. And you know, of late as well, we've had in the same government, they want to introduce a little bit of, you know, I think it's afforestation. They have a little bit of that with farmers and all that. And I just shudder to think, okay, it's a good plan. It has its risks. You have seen the work. You've planted all this million of trees, and you know, without really even thinking what the politics are going around. Do you think this is a system that can work in its own way, or it needs a lot of proper mitigation and checks?
Yeah, I think I would like to answer that question a bit differently. And say we need to do much more.
Much more.
Because we are talking about food security.
Absolutely.
And you've just given an example of some counties that never had an inch of dry land.
But now they are.
Now the drought is becoming almost a semi-arid, you know, and you've seen counties like Meru, which were traditionally very fertile and green counties. There are some of the counties that are at risk of famine. More needs to be done. And our earlier conversation about over-dependence on maize, for example, as a staple food in this country, I don't think is the right direction. Because we have got huge tracts of land that can grow crops like yams, like cassava. You go to Nigeria, the likelihood of picking cassava flour or yam flour in a supermarket is higher than picking a packet of maize flour. Because they have embraced that this traditional food, it can withstand harsher climatic conditions. I think we need to start thinking in that direction.
You're right.
Nigeria, for example, has the biggest cassava institute in the world. They keep on researching on new species that can do well in different geoecological zones and all that. So I think we need to look at it more broadly in terms of the national food security.
Good.
You know, rather than short-term kind of. It must be a broader framework that looks at how do you utilize the land.
Yeah.
And I liked the direction that the government is taking in terms of saying, let's not over rely on rain. We need to move away from rain-fed agriculture.
You're right. Yeah.
You cannot feed a country
Mm-hmm.
where 95% of your food is rain-fed.
Yeah, you're right.
Your agriculture, 95% of your agriculture is rain-fed.
Yeah.
We need to reduce that drastically.
Absolutely.
And get more tracts of land under irrigation.
Yeah.
We get more farmers adopting a climate-smart agriculture, so that then we are able to produce even when the weather is not favorable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're talking about now how national policies really can be integrated to help drive this conversation on climate change. And in fact, just as a follow-up question, your foundation is also very vocal, and you're doing a lot of work, as you've articulated here. So my question to you is, how is your foundation working on its integration programs, international policies, and what have been your learning points, hoping that at least you have been invited on the table, but I don't know, you tell us.
We align ourselves very closely with what the government is doing.
Very true.
Because through that alignment, then you get a lot of support.
Yeah.
In terms of the policy frameworks, in terms of where the government is directing its energies and resources and all that. And not only the government, we also align with what other development partners are doing. If you look at the UN system, for example, when they are co-creating their programs, they also align with what the government is doing.
You're right.
So we co-create programs with the institutions, whether it's governments or development institutions, the UN system. We have crowded in a lot of support institutions. The UN, Team Europe is with us.
Yeah.
So it's a co-creation.
Yeah.
When you look at things like climate change, for example, we are very aligned with the government policy on that.
Yeah.
Because we've looked at the nationally determined contribution, which was revised in December 2020, now is at a 2%.
Yeah.
And you can see the things they are proposing in there in terms of climate change.
Yeah.
Whether it's on renewable energy, whether it's energy efficiency, whether it's issues to do with water, whether it's waste management, afforestation.
Yeah.
So you find our programs are aligned with a government document called the Nationally Determined Contribution document.
Okay.
And Kenya was one of the countries to ratify that in Africa under the Paris Agreement.
Yeah.
So when you look at agriculture, we are speaking into food security. That is within what government is thinking.
Yeah.
When you talk about social protection, again, we work with the government to protect the refugees and the vulnerable within, and the elderly within the community.
Okay.
When you talk about our pillar on entrepreneurship, we are, also working very closely because it's about job creation, and that's where the government is focused. So, all what our programming is very aligned with what development partners are looking at, what the government is looking at, and then we co-create a program then that we are able to support.
Absolutely lovely. And speaking about co-creations, what you've done is incredible. You have adopted over 2 million small-scale farmers, and this is not a small number, and taught close to 40,000 farmers on modern and sustainable agricultural methods. I'm sure the numbers are growing by the day, but this is according to what I was checking out. What has been your lesson so far, especially when you're teaching these big numbers, especially when it comes to agriculture as a backbone in this continent? And because we are suffering because of the drought and the climate changes we were speaking about, what has been your lessons with all these partners that you've been trying to bring on board?
I think the last 2.5 years have really exposed the world with the COVID situation, with now the war in Ukraine. We've just realized how vulnerable the world is.
We are.
And look at wheat, cereals, grains, edible oils.
Been affected big time.
Because global supply chains have broken.
Yeah.
We just realized it was a concentration of a few countries that are leaders in cereals and grains and edible oils and all that.
You're right.
And in Africa, when you go around, you have all what it takes to feed the world. You have land,
Yeah.
you have people, there's water, capital can be crowded in,
Yeah.
technologies are there. What we have learned in the last a couple of years
Yeah.
is you need a champion, somebody who will come and champion the continent
Yeah.
and cause people and governments and development to think in a certain direction.
Absolutely.
And that is what informed our Africa Recovery and Resilient Plan that we have launched recently,
Okay.
and has received support of many players globally, governments, UN,
Yeah.
foundations, and all that. Pillar number one in that plan is agriculture,
Okay. Great.
because we believe Africa needs to claim its space in agriculture. And it's not just production, it's also value addition.
Wow. The full cycle.
We need to produce more, we need to increase productivity of our agricultural output.
Yeah.
Then we need to value add that output within the continent.
Yeah.
And that's where then you start creating jobs.
You're right.
So that is what we have learned.
Okay. Okay.
That we have what it takes to produce wheat,
Yeah.
so that when there is a war in a country that is 10,000 miles from where we are,
Yeah.
then we have no wheat in this
We're not getting into crisis.
and we don't have edible oils.
You're right.
So how can we support canola farmers in Laikipia to produce more canola and we start consuming canola oil from canola seeds?
You're right. You're right.
So these are the lessons that we are picking,
Yeah.
and through the Africa Recovery and Resilience Plan,
Yeah.
we have said that we are going to support agriculture
Yeah.
and extractives
Yeah.
and value add that we need the continent.
Excellent. I have about a minute, and maybe my last question to you will be, you have your peers, both locally and even regionally, and you have a lot of lessons that you've learned in your foundation. What would be your, in 30 seconds, message to your peers as well, who probably have potential as well to do as much, because you're a key example and you're leading at the front?
I think what I would say is we did not inherit this world from our forefathers. We have borrowed it from our children. So we need to act and make sure that we are safeguarding this planet for our children.
Yeah.
Because we have just borrowed it from them. And therefore, in our programming, we must think sustainability. Whether you are a financial institution, whether you are transport on the road, whether you are an industry player, think sustainability in every action that you take.
Yeah, you're right. You have to constantly think about sustainability. I first of all must appreciate that you are thinking not just about making profits, not just about really getting what you need to take and then go, but we're thinking globally and even just to all your customers, how you can really sustain them.
Profits is an outcome of doing good. So it is a do good, do well model.
Yeah.
That is what we believe in.
You're right.
Profits is an outcome of good actions.
The entire ecosystem, and I have seen this happen, especially in your bank, you have partnered with a lot of developmental partners who have, popped in a lot of cash for you to continue on, increasing access to finance to all these MSMEs. But from what you have spoken, it seems that you still have a follow-up mechanism to ensure that they coexist in an environment that is safe, if I may use those words, in these matters, especially on climate. And so my question to you is, so how are you ensuring sustainability in whichever forms with these SMEs to ensure that it has been ingrained in them?
Yeah, thanks for that question, because MSMEs are our key focus, even within the Africa Recovery and Resilience Plan that I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
This is our pillar number 4, focusing on MSMEs, because we believe that that's where jobs will be created.
Yeah.
And our plan is to, within the countries we operate, within the region, to fund 5 million SMEs, MSMEs.
Yeah.
And over a 5-year period, they are able to create 5 jobs.
Yeah.
Those are 25 million direct jobs.
Absolutely.
And through their value chain and ecosystem, they can create another 5 indirect jobs.
Absolutely.
Those are 50 million jobs.
That's a lot of.
When we talk about sustainability, then is a question of capacitating and training these SMEs. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
So we have a pillar which I explained to you about entrepreneurship education and financial inclusion that works with SMEs on the training side.
Yeah.
And training is part of de-risking an SME so that they're even more lendable.
Yeah.
The next thing is, and the training also includes how do you formalize these SMEs? How do you make them to understand marketing, digitizing their businesses, e-commerce conversations, making sure that they are compliant with laws and regulations of the countries they operate in, making sure that even if they are family owned and all that, how can they be sustained in the long run? Because there's the mortality rate of SMEs on the 3rd to 4th year is very high.
Yeah.
And that is what we're trying to remove by building a lot of capacity. So we have a big team that works on coaching and mentoring and training of these SMEs. And even when they get funding, we have actually seen that SMEs that are trained and have gone through our coaching and mentoring, they are better payers of loans than the ones that have not gone through the same kind of training by a huge margin. So we are very encouraged by those kind of results. Yeah. But on the other side, then we are saying, can SMEs participate in climate action? The correct answer is yes. Yes. Because they are the ones that populate the value chains of corporates, of agriculture and all that, or transport. They participate in all value chains that we are supporting as a bank. And therefore they have a critical role by going green and embracing practices and technologies that reduce their own emissions. They can also participate as players within clean energy value chains, for example, whether it's solar, whether it's biogas, whether it's energy efficiency, suppliers of inputs and all that. So we are working with SME, and we have a program actually of greening SMEs that we are implementing to make sure that part of the training is on climate. Is to make sure that SMEs are also not contributing because we think that polluters are industries and cars on the road and all that. But all supply chains have their own carbon emission. Even you and me. Yes. The way we came here for this conversation, we have emitted some carbon on so it's really to think about that in the context of SMEs.
No, you're right. And I think from that last statement you've said, it feels the majority of Kenyans right now, climate change hasn't really hit home. That for someone to sit back and say, wow, I need to start thinking critically about this. And I want to endear to you as a question, because I see from where I sit an ecosystem that you're creating. From education, you're picking kids in their high school levels, bringing them in, educating them so they become champions, if I may use that word, wherever they are going, either in the health sector or whichever profession. They have that mindset that we're talking about to always think, how do I always ensure that in my environment there is sustainability? So I'd like to ask you, based on that and your learning model, what do you think we should do so that Kenyans can wake up? And I'm sure some in Meru now are waking up, but so that Kenyans can wake up and we don't have to start thinking about reacting to the situations, but really starting to begin to adopt to measures in which that will safeguard ourselves. What would be your in thing?
I think the first thing I would say is the government should also play a critical role in terms of creating awareness. And I'm really pleased that the government is talking about climate change.
They're quite vocal.
Conversation is becoming vocal. Blue economy is becoming vocal. So the government, in terms of, because they have the machinery out to the grassroots, they really need to complement in terms of awareness creation. I think for the first time, we have seen very cold temperatures here in the last couple of months.
It's actually been erratic.
Europe was melting.
Yeah.
And we saw forest fires in some countries we've never seen before.
Absolutely.
We saw tarmac melting, and the roofs of houses in Britain melting.
Absolutely.
Because of high temperatures.
And bridges being covered with foil so they don't crack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are now seeing flooding.
Yeah.
In Asia.
Absolutely.
Pakistan is underwater. And this information need to be relayed in a way that people understand.
Yeah.
I'm sure when you go to your rural area, you now see the river that used to, to be big, you can't even cross, is now a stream, or is not even there.
It's not even there.
So these things must be played many times until they think that climate change is real. The tragedy is Africa emits only 3 to 4% of the global emissions. Yeah. But we are the one bearing the brunt of climate change. Yeah. So we need to talk about adaptation much more than mitigation. Yeah. And make adaptation funds available. Yeah. So that we can create resilience within our ecosystems, especially agriculture ecosystems. We need a lot of funding for adaptation.
You're right.
But I think the government needs to play a key role and supplement what the corporates like ourselves are doing in terms of passing this information. Right. You've seen the kind of work we're doing with the schools, for example, where we are converting schools from over-reliance on firewood to more cleaner sources of cooking and heating.
Brilliant work.
And we are converting a lot of schools because we realize schools are consuming 10 million trees every year to cook. Those are so many trees we are cutting, and they are contributing to the conversation we are having on climate action.
You're right.
So, and this conversation we are starting in schools, and to come back to your earlier point, that why did we choose schools for clean cooking, for planting trees? Is because we want to teach those young learners something when they're still in school. Yeah. That you don't need to cut a tree to cook. Yeah. And you start thinking about environmental conservation, about taking care of trees, because we teach them to adopt a tree. Yeah. We teach them how you can plant your age. Yeah. So if you are 10 this year, you make sure that on your birthday you plant 10 seedlings. Yeah. Then next year you plant 11. Yeah. The other year you plant. By the time you leave school, you have a forest. Either in your home or in school. Absolutely. So we are trying to capture this and then teaching them, you don't need to cut that tree for firewood. Yeah. There are cleaner sources that are available. Yeah. So these conversations needs to be, we need more players to come and join us in these conversations. But I'm very happy that the government is really starting to talk about climate action.
Excellent. I have about a minute, but before you go, you have spoken a word there that I would want people to know. We shall have it at length some other time. Blue economy. And I know from the sidelines that you're just coming from a serious convention where you're speaking about this. What would you just, in a nutshell, to help people understand it, what is this all about and what are we looking at? Especially you guys leading at the front in these conversations.
Yeah, blue economy is really harnessing the resources of our water bodies, whether they are oceans or seas or rivers. And there are so many resources that are available. Absolutely. In the seas and in rivers and in fish ponds and where there is some body of water.
Some aqua life, yes.
Yes. And planet Earth, it's only that, I think 29% that is land. The rest is water.
Over 70% of
over 71% of this planet is covered by water. What? There's something in there that we can harness.
You're right.
And feed the world. They say whoever rules the
ocean,
the waves or the ocean rules the world. There are a lot of resources there. Yeah. From a food perspective, from a transport, from logistics, from there are a lot of things that come with the blue economy.
Yeah.
And the oceans can feed the world.
You're right.
We just need to have the right policies, the right technologies to harness those resources.
Yeah.
Look at seaweeds.
Yeah.
Seaweeds, for example, is food.
Yeah.
And seaweed farming, China is leading in seaweed farming.
Yeah.
Seaweed can do better here than in China.
Yeah.
In our coastlines.
Yeah.
And we can farm, and you can have seaweeds on your salads and all that. So there's a lot of resources, whether it's fish.
Yeah.
Here in Kenya, I think our tonnage is about 9 tons per year. The potential is 350,000 tons. Why are we not? Why are we importing fish from?
Yeah.
Whatever. When
There's a lot of import. Apparently, the percentage is actually very high now.
Yeah. Yeah. So what needs to be done to for those conversations to kick off? So blue economy is a big area that
it's actually certainly a big conversation on that and how we can really harness that, especially on our rivers right now. There's some rivers that you can't even talk about because of how they look, and I think we have had documentaries coming out on how toxic the water is, how we have killed our aquatic life and all that.
Exactly, but more importantly is how then do we sustain those resources from a climate change perspective.
You're right.
Pollution in the ocean, pollution in rivers.
Yeah.
It's also the big conversation that in the context of climate change, with the context of COP27 that is in Africa this year.
Absolutely.
That we need to see how.
Actually, wanted you to mention something on that. How are you associating or participating in it?
Yeah, we have different. We're having conversations with different players. In the context of COP27, and we'll be making our contribution. Together with others.
Okay.
Because the danger in Africa is you can't go to COP27 alone. Yeah. So you need a big voice.
You're a block.
So that you're able to harness much more resources.
Absolutely.
If we go to COP27 as silos, we'll come with nothing. if we go as countries, as regions, then we are able to negotiate, especially on the adaptation funds that I've spoken about. Africa needs adaptation funds more than mitigation. Because we are not emitting a lot. But we are the ones suffering more. So adaptation is what we need. So we need to create that voice in the context of COP27 and take it there.
I have a challenge for you as I close. You told me you're turning 32 when? I'm just trying to kid about your age. Guys might say, don't tell us his age, but anyway. When is your birthday? The day. Just the day. Which month is it?
It's in April 17th.
Oh, it already passed.
So it's already passed, but
so you planted that number of trees. Actually, that's my challenge.
I have done 19 million in 2 years. So I think.
Don't ask me how many I've done. But my position is.
We are very proud as that as Equity.
No, 19 million is not a joke. It's a big number. I am looking forward next year in April. We will come with our media facility to just encourage people that you can plant the number of trees according to your age, as you've said. I love that. In fact, I like the term, sort of like trees for birthday, or your birthday, plant this number of trees.
Yeah.
Innovation, right there.
Exactly. There are some countries, you go, instead of signing the visitor's book, you actually plant a tree and write your name. I found that very, very nice.
Wow.
You don't sign the visitor's book, you actually given a seedling. When planted there, we mark it with your name. You are here. Yes. not
sort of those scribbling hours.
Exactly.
You plant the tree and nurture it. And by the way, here at Beyond Profit, we say don't just plant, grow that tree. Ensure that it goes all the way. I can't thank you much enough and really appreciate the work that you're doing. Pass our regards to your entire team. And you can tell the people who are not members now can know why they need to be members to such an organization that not only just thinks about you, taking from you, but also how they can give back to ensure that you are sustainable and growing very well. Mr. Eric Naivasha, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
There you have it. Speaking about Matters Climate Action SDG 13, how is such a global giant and even a regional king in the banking sector, what are they doing? We want to appreciate what Equity Group Foundation are doing under the leadership of Eric Naivasha and his team. Thank you so much for your time right here on Beyond Profit. See you next time, same place for another different conversation.